And tonight, the Trump administration has doubled down on what many see as a blatant cover-up. They're doing something unusual, and we're going to report this out tonight. They are blocking state officials, who, of course, are on the ground and involved and normally would be a key part of gathering information over time. But they're blocking state officials from participating meaningfully in the investigation of that shooting yesterday. Minnesota officials say, quote, the FBI informed them they would no longer have access to case materials, scene evidence, or investigative interviews. In other words, the feds are cutting them out. And that means you have a Trump loyalist who's been very controversial. There's been talk about removing him even because Trump aides aren't happy with him. And he's had, as you may have noticed this year, quite a few errors and blunders in the investigative capacity. But Kash Patel at the FBI will basically be the person looking into Kristi Noem's DHS. That is a recipe for a cover-up. And suspicious that they don't want any local officials looking at facts and evidence. The feds have not sifted through materials yet or said, hey, let's get our arms around this and then let's have a process or any of the normal things you would expect. But this is not a normal time. This is not a normal government. And it's our job to level with you about what's happening. In more normal times, we cover these type of stories. And if you live in America, you have probably lived through the discussions and coverage locally or nationally of a lot of times where the authorities, be it local police or the feds, have used heavy or lethal force. In fact, just about everyone alive in the United States who's an adult remembers George Floyd and the BLM protests that came out of the use of police authority. That was in 2020. This case involves federal authority that is, on the one hand, growing out of or echoing the past problems we've had with the use of force in this country. But also, on the other hand, in the unusual response from the Trump administration, in the rush to make misstatements about it or lie if they know better, this is also a direct part of the current autocratic effort in the United States, where you have a president who is trying to use soldiers and military powers against the citizenry. I repeat, this is a part of that larger policy. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that we are trying to take a position on when and how presidents can use soldiers and militarized police, because there are many times that they do. And that's how the National Guard system works, etc. But we have to accurately report that the militarization of what was once relatively civil, calm deportation policy in the United States, the militarization of ICE to this degree, and the rhetoric and aggressive, sometimes violent claims by top officials in the Trump administration are part of this. So that's kind of the problem set. As for what happened, we showed the video last night. If you're following the news, you've probably seen it one way or the other. And there are more forensic accounts of this. The New York Times has a very detailed shot-by-shot analysis of that footage and some other materials they've gathered together. It's hard to watch, but here it is.
The SUV reverses, then turns right, apparently attempting to leave. At the same time, the agent filming crosses toward the left of the vehicle and grabs his gun. He opens fire on the motorist and continues shooting as she drives past. The moment the agent fires, he is standing here, to the left of the SUV, and the wheels are pointing to the right, away from the agent. This appears to conflict with allegations that the SUV was ramming or about to ram the officer. We can see the agent is not being run over. In fact, his feet are positioned away from the SUV.
That's an important point because this is about evidence. And when you look at cases like this, and we've covered many, you have two basic things to keep in mind. What happened and what did people think happened? That video, the slowed down video we showed you last night, the materials we have show that what happened was the ICE agent escalating the encounter, using deadly force, shooting an unarmed woman to death, while not facing anything approaching the legally required danger of grievous bodily harm or death. That's the requirement. So that's what appears to have happened. As I've cautioned, and everybody knows, you can get further information, further angles, you can always adjust, but that's what happened. That's door one. Door number two is what reasonably people think happened. Now, that is still in court up for debate. If the officer says, well, you have the hindsight of looking at all these videos, in the moment I really felt this way and I reasonably had that apprehension and I acted on it. And we've covered cases where it comes down to that. What is not okay and not part of the legal process is to have government officials over in Washington or wherever trying to weigh in on this or lie to the American public about it before we even get all the facts. And so that's important because we've heard Trump administration officials jump in and say things that are not accurate about, as I'm telling you, either what happened, what we can see with evidence, or what that one official, that LICE agent, thought happened. And if they were investigated or potentially indicted, you would have a whole legal process where they're presumed innocent and they would get their side of the story too. But the idea that Trump officials have said there was only clearly self-defense happening here doesn't wash. And the more we learn about this, the more you'll see. Here are the 3 shots that rang out in the video.
No! No! Shame! Shame!
Not just one errant shot, not just one sort of sudden decision, but the car, as you saw there, continues to move away. You have the shot, another, and another. Photos of the car only indicate visually one bullet hole in the windshield. Now, look, you can see here, you can see most of the windshield, you can see that bullet hole. So forensically, there's going to be an investigation here, although we have at the same time the questions of a federal Trump cover-up. But any serious investigation, and there are outside parties like journalists looking into this, this is an AP photo, that are going to look at whether these second and third shots were not from anywhere to the left or in front of the car, but as you could see, potentially coming through the open window, meaning the officer was, again, as a geographic, factual matter, already out of the car's path, with the bullet being fired at the side of the car as it drove away, not into the car from the front. Witnesses also indicate the officers did something that can happen when you have multiple people, but that goes to the culpability of different individuals when they say, oh, maybe this individual, this woman, was trying to run them down or was conflicting with orders, which, by the way, doesn't authorize lethal force, but is a relevant question. But witnesses say the woman was receiving opposite instructions. Quote, ICE gave her orders to leave. At the same time, another ICE person said, get out of the car and reach for the door handle. So, according to this eyewitness who spoke to NPR, it was difficult for her to leave as she'd been ordered to do.
ICE was screaming at her to move, move, move. And then they got really aggressive and went over to her driver's side door and tried to open her door. And then she obviously got spooked and started to reverse. And then an officer approached her and leaned across, like got in front of her vehicle, and then leaned across the hood of her car and shot her point blank in the face.